Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Meloni, and today I am here with my colleague, Dr. Ehssan Sakhaee, and we are going to talk about something he's created to help all of you become better and stronger leaders. And it's called the OWL framework. And yes, we pronounce it like owl the bird, but it's really AAUL. And so let's just start by saying hello. How are you doing today?
Hi, Margaret. Thanks so much for having me, and thank you for doing this interview with me on this framework, the leadership framework, the OWL framework that I will
Oh,
be discussing today.
I and everyone else looking forward to learning about it. So why don't we just start off with the basic, like what is the OWL framework?
So the OWL framework is essentially a leadership framework. It's an awareness-based leadership framework, which basically essentially says that at the core of the effective leadership, any effective leadership is high level of awareness or presence with whatever is happening, starting with self. So self-awareness. So self-awareness is at the core of it, and then extending that to our environment, social awareness, and environmental awareness to really get an understanding of what are the real challenges, what are the root causes of problems. So getting a deeper understanding. So awareness leads to understanding and then leadership. Before we get to even understanding, there is a level of acknowledgement and acceptance of reality as it is. So acknowledging reality as it is. Now, I'd like to share with you the actual framework, and I can just load it on my screen, see if I can.
That seems like a really good idea. So let's do that. And while you're doing that, of course, I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm going to ask you, so as you're loading that up, what was your inspiration for all of this?
It's, I think, over the years, as I was teaching leadership, various cohorts, mostly technical professionals and project managers, much like yourself, Margaret. We actually
Mm-hmm.
taught the same subject for the audience out there. We taught leadership and the human element in project management, which you're also continuing to teach, which I stopped teaching a year ago due to not being in the United States physically. So
Yes, it's a strange thing when we're all on Zoom anyway, right? But
yeah, but that's fine because what having hundreds of students across the United States, Australia, even Japan. So it's kind of really understanding cultures and
Mhm.
dynamics of how teams work in different contexts. Really, it was also from my own personal practice, and I believe you would relate to this, is recognizing awareness is so fundamental in being able to be effective in anything. I mean, even just personal effectiveness.
Mhm.
And in, whether I was managing a team or just managing my own life, every time I lost my awareness or presence, I would, you know, fail at something, something wrong will, something goes wrong if I did not have, a high level of awareness. And I would see it in the people I work with, the professionals who also were leading teams and leading
Mhm.
their lives, and recognizing that um, all the problems are arising from lack of awareness, lack of understanding, um, and
Mhm.
from increasing our awareness and acknowledging reality as it is, not denying it, not resisting it, not turning our gaze away from it, just really looking at it. And sometimes it's uncomfortable to recognize, oh, wow, it's actually our fault. It's just
Mhm.
acknowledging and accepting the fact that it is as it is. And now, why is it the way it is? What are the root causes of this problem? Just going into the understanding piece. And then from there, once we have a deeper understanding, which includes empathy and being able to relate to others, we come to a point of being able to be more effective leaders. So
Yeah. Like,
that's
what you're saying makes sense to me, that awareness. And one of the ways in my head I was kind of translating it is when times when I have lost touch and I just went into like react mode, those are the times when I looked back and I was like, ooh, I'll say cringing at maybe things I said or did or decisions I made. And
Mm.
so I hear you, definitely, definitely. So now you're showing us the framework, and so this really gives us an understanding. And I'm sure you probably want to make some comments about all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see, everything starts with awareness.
Mhm.
Awareness leads, just having awareness leading to self-awareness, social awareness. Now, VUCA awareness is the volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous world that we're living. You know, increasingly our world is becoming more complex, more uncertain, less predictable. And so awareness of the fact that things are constantly changing. There's just very little way to predict the future, even tomorrow, what's going to happen. And just learning to accept that, the fact that that's the way it is. So that's the VUCA acceptance, just to the
Mhm.
reality that that's our world. Our world is unpredictable. You know, let's adapt and just recognize the reality as it is. Self-acceptance is actually accepting ourselves as we are right now. And this is
Mhm.
something most people have a challenge with, because we are in a culture that we have to constantly focus on improvement. And this is fine. There's nothing wrong with continuous improving. In fact, it's one of the major components of my teaching, which is a Japanese concept of Kaizen, continuous improvement, just constantly improving.
So, what would you say is different from your framework than others? I mean, you've given us this great overview, and I could probably guess, but that wouldn't make sense for me to do that.
Mm.
Um, you looked at other frameworks and saw that they could be enhanced. And so, what do you feel are the pieces that OWL fills in the gap on?
Very good question. Absolutely. So, Dr. Goleman's framework, leadership framework, it's the emotional intelligence leadership
Mhm.
framework. Also starts with self-awareness leading to self-management, leading to social awareness, and then social management, which is leadership and influence. So it's very similar in that sense. Whereas the OWL framework extends it to also our environment, the VUCA environment. So awareness of our environment, awareness of the complexity of our environment, awareness of the fact that everything's uncertain and often chaotic, and there's a deep interconnectedness that is there that we need to also be aware of. An example of that is the pandemic. The pandemic, one place in the world, it started in just one little
Mhm.
market, and it soon the whole world, it just took the whole world. Even though people, countries had closed their borders, they said, we're going to try to keep our country safe. We can keep, isolating ourselves from the rest of the world, but it just doesn't work because we are so deeply interconnected and life is interwoven. And we need to have that awareness. We need to have a deep understanding of the fact that we are interconnected, and the world is complex. And so essentially, it's just extending that framework. In fact, I was inspired by Dr. Goleman's framework a number of years ago when I started teaching leadership.
Mhm.
And then when we got into teaching leadership to engineers and project managers and managing projects and complexity and all of those things, we needed to bring the framework, we needed to expand to adapt to that kind of more complex project environment and the complex society and the world that we're living, the VUCA world that we're living. So
Mhm.
that's one major difference, is extending it beyond the social context, which the social concept, of course, is the major component, but it's also understanding how we are interconnected with the extended environment that we're in. And the other important addition, it's almost like I would say it's an evolution of that framework, Dr. Goleman's framework. The other addition is acknowledging reality as it is, which is grounded in mindfulness, which is an essential component of our program, mindful and
Mhm.
compassion. So it is acknowledging reality rather than denying or resisting it. It's okay, it is as it is. What can we do now? So that addition of the attitude of acceptance and acknowledgement and leaning into reality rather than turning our gaze away from it to resist it, deny it, which a lot of us do, a lot of leaders do. A lot of leaders don't want
Mhm.
places where it just doesn't feel comfortable to look at. or acknowledge mistakes they've made. It's that acknowledgement acceptance piece is really important, which it's embedded in the framework. And the rest of it is almost just kind of follows that same paradigm of awareness of self leadership leading to uh, um, uh, social awareness and social management, and VUCA awareness and VUCA leadership. So it's kind of so self leadership, always everything starts with the self, because if the leader can't lead themselves effectively, how can they lead teams
How can
effectively?
they lead others?
So that's the first piece. And we can never be perfect in terms of how we lead ourselves and how we lead others, but we can always start looking into where we can improve from our end, and how we can extend that to others, how we can lead others more effectively through our own self leadership.
I always found that actually encouraging about emotional intelligence, that we always had the ability to grow. I used to say to people, like, the good news is you can keep doing this till you're 100 years old. And I mean, because I think it's great to know that it's not like you're not stuck. It's not like, well, you have no empathy, too bad. It's not that's not how it is. And so I actually find that very encouraging, probably because the first time I ever took an emotional intelligence test, I was super average and I was so disappointed, but it was a good learning experience. It was a good learning experience. Okay. So last question, and you've kind of touched on this, but I was kind of hoping to bring it together. So OWL and mindfulness and compassionate leadership maybe help us understand how those things go together, or how one is supportive of the other, and vice versa.
Absolutely. I think this is critical. And the reason, Margaret, we brought these two together because they complement each other so well. And
Mm-hmm.
essentially, awareness, which is mindfulness, and the program helps participants cultivate awareness to a higher and higher degree, both of themselves, of others, of their environment, through the practices and that we provide through the program. And that awareness leads to understanding and empathy and compassion. So compassion then comes into play because compassion goes more down into the heart, and how to connect at a deeper level with others, so that we can be more authentic in how we influence. But also it's influenced through a deep sense of care for those individuals. The understanding piece leads to that compassion, and compassion is a very important component of being able to be effective. And this is your expertise, Margaret. So
Uh,
looking forward to your approach in helping our leaders cultivate compassion, because I kind of focus more on the cultivating awareness, which again,
which is great. Which is great.
which moves into that compassion seamlessly, and that's why we're doing this together. And
Mm-hmm.
they complement each other greatly. And in terms of being able to, even if we look at it ourselves, how to be more aware, but also compassionate, so which is compassion, which that forgiveness piece actually comes into play here as well, is awareness of, oh, actually, we're just human. We can make mistakes. Let's be compassionate, and then
Mm-hmm.
focus on how we can improve. And you mentioned the growth mindset, that we can absolutely develop any skill, including empathy, emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Any skill is learnable, and this is the beauty. And helping our participants actually recognize that they can cultivate compassion and mindfulness and empathy and effective leadership. All of these skills are learnable. And throughout the years, both yourself, that you've been teaching, thousands of students,
Mm-hmm.
myself, we can see that there's development in the effective leadership of project managers and engineers primarily. And these are very technical people, but they can certainly develop all the soft skills that are required to become effective in the social context, and leading teams and leading organizations. So that's a beautiful and exciting thing, that we are doing, and teaming up to do this together is really exciting for me as well.
It is very fun. Thank you. Now, is there anything else you want to say before we complete our discussion for today?
No, other than that, I'm really looking forward to working with you to help leaders cultivate mindfulness and compassion and become the best version of themselves and create the best version of their teams and organizations, because mindfulness and compassion are a very important piece, especially in our today's society, in the new normal, where
Mhm.
people are working remotely. There's more complexity. There's less physical contact. So compassion through a virtual environment is something we'll also cover. Is like, how do we
Yes.
actually show that we care when we don't necessarily see people as much as we normally did in the past. So and that's why these two are so important. And how do we extend our awareness? Because now being able to become aware and empathetic in a virtual environment or a hybrid environment is even, has its own challenges. So we will
Yes.
looking at that as well. So apart from that, thank you so much for the opportunity, Margaret, and thank you for the interview, and thank you for working with me on this exciting program.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to our work too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye for now.